this is Mrs. Maglinte. So today we're going to be painting a yellow sun with a red background, but we're going to be using alternative colors rather than the Stockmar colors. We're going to be using some pan watercolors, and I'm going to talk to you about different containers that you can use. So the Stockmar watercolors are the traditional Waldorf colors, and they are my favorite. I've tried a lot of different watercolors with children, and I feel like the Stockmar are the best. You can mix them 4 parts water to 1 part of color, so they really can go a long ways. But if you're not ready to get the Stockmar colors, you can also use these pan colors. And what you want to do, if you're going to use the pan colors, I suggest you get some that just have a few amount of pans. If you get the kind that has like 20 different types, what happens is that when the children are painting, that the colors are going to start to meld into each other and kind of make a big mess. Mainly the colors you need are the yellow, the blue, and the red. These colors here are not as important, although they're fun to use. Now, traditionally in Waldorf schools, they use these kind of jars with lids, and they have the nice wooden container that keeps the paint from spilling. But you can also use something like this. So these are baby food jars, and they work really well for the watercolor. They have a nice lid on them. And then this is just a drawer organizer, and you can get these sometimes at the dollar store and some other stores, and they work really well to hold the paint. What I found when painting with children is inevitably the paint gets knocked over. And so I have them take off the lids, but I have them leave the jars in the container, and that saves a lot of accidents. You also might want to just be using just some regular table salt. Sometimes we use that. You'll need a washcloth to dry your brushes with, and also you're going to need some kind of a napkin, perhaps a linen napkin or a cotton napkin that you can dry your paper with. The brushes I like to use this 1-inch flat brush that we call Peter paintbrush. It has a nice beveled handle on it so that you can scrape. It's called an Aquarelle, and Cotman is the brand that I like for this kind of brush. Then this brush is a number 12 round brush. You could also use a number 10 or something even smaller, but this is a really nice brush to use for painting. And then finally, you might want to have a smaller brush, a detail brush to use if you want to be doing some a little bit more intricate work. So the typical watercolor paper that they used in the Waldorf schools is from Stockmar, but it comes from Mercurius in the United States. But Mercurius is only selling to schools. So you might want to think of a different kind of a paper. And I also like to use Canson paper. It comes in a 30-sheet pad. It's 140 pound, which is what you want for watercolor paper. Or you might want to try the Strathmore. Strathmore also has a really good quality 140 pound watercolor paper that you might want to try. And I've been using these half sheets. So actually a lot of the papers come a lot larger. I might just try the 9x12 sheets of paper. So you're going to want to soak your paper because that's the Waldorf painting tradition. And so I have a large container. It's larger than your typical dish pan, and that way I can soak my paper. But you could also use something a little bit smaller. I usually like to soak it for at least 5 minutes, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, so it can absorb some of the water. And I work on a surface that has a piece of contact paper on it. So this is a piece of foam board like you might use for a science display project. It's a little bit thicker, and then I put a piece of contact paper on it. So I'm going to lift my paper out and shake it off a little bit, and then I'm going to lay it down. And I'm going to get my drying cloth, And I'm going to go ahead and dry it off. So we want to leave it a little bit wet, but we don't want it to have a lot of puddles. All right, and then I have my painting cloth here. I'm not going to be using the salt this time. And the brush I'm going to be using is this flat brush. So it's always nice to have a big jar of water. And we want to thoroughly wet our brush. So make sure that your brush is really nice and wet. And let's take a little water off on the sides like this. Okay, we're going to start with the yellow. And so I'm going to get my yellow here. And you see how I can kind of work with it a little bit to get some paint up into it. You want to add your water when you're just getting started with that painting project. You want to go ahead and add water to your pan paints so that it has a chance to start working. Don't wait till the last minute to add the water, because you want it, what they do is they can re-moisturize. They'll dry out, but then if you add water to them, they'll be ready when you are to paint. So let's make a beautiful circle here. So this represents yellow. Yellow glows like the sun. So let's get some beautiful yellow down. And yellow loved to dance and be outside. All right, now let's go ahead and rinse our brush really well. Let's take a little off on the side. And she had this friend, Red, who was a very magical fellow. Let's get some of that red into our brush here. Now, Red really liked yellow, but he really hadn't gotten to know her that well, and so thought maybe best to kind of wait and shake hands until he got a chance to know her a little bit better. So you'll notice how you have to keep dipping into the color. But the fact that the paper's wet will help as far as getting the color down. A little more water on my brush. Let's get some more red. So red and yellow were starting to get to know each other, and they were going to meet very soon. They knew they would be friends. Now I'm going to put a little more red on my brush. And now I'm going to go right around here. And you see I'm going to make a beautiful orange. So when red and yellow met, they created orange. And they had such a good time playing. They played all afternoon, and they made a date to see each other the next day and continue with their imagination and their imagination stories. And red and yellow were having such a good time playing that they decided to get together again tomorrow. And now we take the back of our brush handle and we can put our initials in. And go around this one more time. So I hope you enjoyed doing this painting with red and yellow, and I'll look forward to painting with you again. Bye-bye.